had served the Galactic Council for 40 cycles. She had observed 17 species during times of conflict. She had written reports that shaped policy and changed the fate of entire civilizations. But she had never been afraid of an assignment until now. The orders came directly from High Arbiter himself. She was to embed with human military forces during their war against the Dominion. She was to observe their methods, their psychology, their decision-making patterns. The Council needed to understand this strange new species that had stumbled into galactic civilization only 40 standard years ago. Read the briefing files during her transport journey. Humans originated from a planet called Earth, a world classified as a Category 7. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere contained a corrosive gas they breathed by choice. Their own star bombarded them with radiation that they willingly exposed themselves to for pleasure. They had evolved from pursuit predators who chased their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. None of this made sense to her mind. They were a species of careful planners. They calculated risks. They avoided unnecessary conflict. They had survived for 12,000 cycles by never fighting battles they could not win. Humans had existed in space for less than a century, and they had already started 2 wars and finished 3 that other species had begun. Her transport docked with the human carrier vessel called the Endurance. The name itself troubled her. Why would a species name their ship after the act of suffering? Captain Laura Mitchell met her at the airlock. The human female was shorter than expected, with brown hair pulled back tightly and eyes that seemed to look through things rather than at them. She wore simple gray clothes with colored patches that indicated her rank. "Observer," the captain said, "welcome aboard. We've prepared quarters for you near the bridge. You'll have full access to all ship areas except the reactor core and weapons systems. Standard security protocols." Followed her through corridors that felt too narrow. Humans moved around her constantly, nodding greetings or stepping aside with quick apologies. They touched each other frequently. A pat on the shoulder here, a brief embrace there. Physical contact that would be considered intrusive among her people. "Your ship is very crowded," observed. Captain Mitchell smiled. It was a strange expression that showed teeth but apparently indicated friendliness rather than aggression. "We call it cozy. Builds bonds between the crew. When you live and work this close together, you become family." Family, another human concept that found difficult to understand. They raised their young in communal centers where professional caregivers provided optimal development conditions. The idea of maintaining emotional connections to genetic relations throughout adulthood seemed inefficient. She spent her first 3 days learning the ship. The Endurance carried 2,000 crew members and 800 ground combat soldiers. It was not the largest vessel in the human fleet, but Captain Mitchell explained it was designed for rapid deployment to crisis zones. And there was a crisis waiting. The Dominion had invaded a human colony world called 4. It was a small mining settlement, valuable only for rare minerals. They had landed forces and trapped 300 civilian workers underground. They were holding them as leverage against human counterattack. Attended the planning meeting where Captain Mitchell briefed her officers on the mission. Lieutenant would lead the ground team. Their objective was simple: reach the colony, evacuate the civilians, and hold until transport ships could extract everyone. Intelligence suggested they had 18 hours before reinforcements arrived. It would be tight, but possible. What struck was the mood in the room. These beings were preparing to enter combat where many of them might die. By any logical assessment, they should have been tense, focused, perhaps afraid. Instead, they made jokes. They complained about the food in the ship canteen. One sergeant showed pictures of his daughter to anyone who would look. That sergeant was named Danny Cole. He was a large man with a kind face and hands that seemed too big for his body. He approached after the briefing and offered her a small piece of food wrapped in shiny paper. "Chocolate," he explained. "Earth specialty, Figured you might want to try it since you're studying us. Accepted the gift out of diplomatic courtesy. The taste was strange but not unpleasant, sweet and slightly bitter at the same time. Thank you, Sergeant Cole. He smiled that teeth-showing smile. Just call me Danny. You're going down to the surface with us, right? Staying with my squad. Those are my orders. Good, stay close to me. I've got 2 rules in combat. Keep your head down and protect the person next to you. You follow those, you'll be fine. Recorded this interaction in her notes. The human had invited her into his protection circle despite knowing nothing about her beyond her role as an observer. He had offered her food. He had shared images of his offspring. Among such behaviors would indicate either deep personal friendship or attempted manipulation. She did not think Danny Cole was manipulating her. She thought he was simply being human. She met other members of the ground team in the following hours. Grace was the squad medic, a small woman with steady hands and a laugh that came easily. She explained human field surgery in disturbing detail, describing how she could remove limbs or seal wounds with portable equipment. She spoke about cutting people open the same way she spoke about her favorite music. Private Santos was young, only 22 Earth years. She was nervous about the mission but tried to hide it. Corporal Ben was older and quieter. He had served in 3 previous combat deployments and carried himself with the careful attention of someone who had seen friends die. They were all so different from each other. Different backgrounds, different personalities, different reasons for being here. Yet they functioned as a single unit, communicating in half-finished sentences and knowing looks that suggested years of shared experience. Did not understand how this was possible. Her people trained soldiers through strict standardization. Everyone learned the same methods, followed the same protocols, thought the same patterns. Variation was weakness. These humans were nothing but variation, and yet somehow it made them stronger. The transport ships launched on schedule, strapped herself into a seat between Danny Cole and Grace. The descent through atmosphere shook the small vessel violently, but the humans seemed unbothered. Some of them slept. Through the small window, watched the planet's surface grow closer. Somewhere down there, 300 civilians waited for rescue. Somewhere down there, enemy forces waited to kill the soldiers around her. And somehow, these humans were ready to face both. She had observed 17 species in conflict. She had seen courage and cowardice, strategy and stupidity. She thought she understood war. She was about to learn that she understood nothing. The transport hit the ground hard, felt the impact through her entire body, her teeth clicking together despite the protective harness. Before she could recover, the rear door was already dropping open, and humans were moving past her in a rush of bodies and equipment. Danny Cole grabbed her arm and pulled her forward. "Stay low, stay close," he said, and then they were outside. The landing zone was supposed to be clear. Intelligence had marked it as safe. Intelligence had been wrong. Weapons fire erupted from the tree line to their left. Saw flashes of light, heard sounds that cracked through the air like breaking bones. A soldier 3 meters ahead of her stumbled and fell. Another dropped beside him. Froze. Her training told her to find cover, to assess the situation, to wait for orders. The military doctrine emphasized careful response to unexpected threats. Retreat and reorganize. Minimize losses. Fight only when conditions favored success. The humans did not retreat. Lieutenant was shouting commands before could even process what was happening. His voice carried over the chaos with impossible clarity. Soldiers responded instantly, moving to positions as if they had practiced this exact scenario 1,000 times. First squad covering fire, second squad flank left, medics to the wounded. Grace ran past toward the fallen soldiers. She ran directly toward the source of enemy fire without hesitation. Her medical bag bounced against her hip as she dropped into a slide beside the first wounded man. watched Private Santos grab a fallen by his armor straps and drag him backward toward a rocky outcrop. She did this while firing her weapon with her other hand. She did not stop moving. She did not stop shooting. They emerged from the trees. They were larger than humans, standing nearly 3 meters tall with thick gray skin and 4 arms that each held weapons. Their eyes were black and showed no emotion. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never encountered prey that fought back. There were at least 50 of them. The human landing force numbered 38. Ben charged toward a cluster of soldiers. He moved so fast that almost lost track of him. 2 energy bolts hit his chest armor and he stumbled but kept running. He reached the enemy position and began fighting with a combination of his weapon and his bare hands. Had read about human endurance. She had studied reports about their pain tolerance and their ability to continue functioning with injuries that would incapacitate other species. Reading about it was different from seeing it. Ben killed 4 before his squad caught up to support him. He was bleeding from wounds in his arm and side. He did not seem to notice. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, 8 humans were dead and 12 were wounded. All 50 had been killed. Lieutenant gathered his remaining forces and began moving toward the colony. There was no pause to recover, no moment of reflection. The wounded who could walk continued on. The wounded who could not were carried. "We lost time," said to his sergeants. "Double pace until we reach the civilian zone." Danny Cole fell into step beside. His face was splattered with something dark that she did not want to identify. He still smiled at her. "You okay, observer? First combat experience." Realized she was shaking. "I have observed conflict before." Observing and being in it are different things. He checked his weapon as he walked, his movements automatic. "You did good. You stayed down and stayed out of the way. That's all we needed from you." She wanted to ask him how he could be so calm. She wanted to ask him how he had watched friends die and continued fighting without hesitation. She wanted to ask him what was wrong with his species that they could do these things. Instead, she asked, "How much further to the colony?" 6 kilometers through rough terrain. "We'll be there in 2 hours if we don't hit more resistance." They hit more resistance. A patrol found them at the halfway point. This battle was shorter but more intense. The enemy had better positions, and the humans had to advance uphill through open ground. Watched Danny Cole take a piece of metal shrapnel to his left leg. It happened fast, a small explosion nearby and then blood spreading across his pants. He dropped to one knee, pulled a strip of cloth from his pack, and wrapped the wound himself. It took him less than 30 seconds. "Sergeant Cole, you are injured," said. "You should fall back to the medics." He laughed. It was not a happy sound, but it was genuine. "No medics available right now. They're busy with worse cases. This is just a scratch." "You are bleeding significantly." "I've bled before." He stood up, tested his weight on the leg, and grimaced. "My people need me here. That matters more than my leg." He moved forward to rejoin the fighting, followed because she did not know what else to do. The patrol was eliminated. 11 more dead. 2 more humans killed, 5 wounded. Danny Cole was one of the wounded, but he refused to be counted among them. They reached the mining colony as the sun began to set. The settlement was built into the side of a mountain, with heavy blast doors protecting the main entrance. Forces had damaged the doors but not breached them. Lieutenant contacted the civilians inside. A woman named Carol was leading them. She had organized the survivors and kept them safe for 3 days. Her voice over the communication device was tired but steady. "Thank God you're here," she said. "We have 287 survivors. 87 are children. We're running low on water and the air recyclers are failing." "We're coming in," replied. "Prepare for evacuation. We have 18 hours until enemy reinforcements arrive." Noted his words. He had said 18 hours with confidence, as if it were a certainty. He did not mention that they had lost 1/4 of their force before even reaching the objective. He did not mention that the numbers no longer made sense. She was beginning to understand something about humans. They did not make decisions based on mathematics alone. They made decisions based on something else, something she could not quantify. The blast doors opened, and the soldiers entered the colony. Followed them into the darkness, knowing that what came next would be worse than what came before. She did not know how she knew this. Perhaps she was beginning to think like a human. That thought frightened her more than the ever could. The mining colony was a place of shadows and fear. Emergency lighting cast everything in dim red tones. The air smelled stale and wrong, recycled too many times through failing machines. Could hear water dripping somewhere in the distance, a steady rhythm that counted the seconds like a dying heartbeat. The civilians emerged from deeper chambers when they heard the soldiers arrive. They came slowly at first, disbelieving, then faster, crying out with relief, reaching for the humans in their battle armor as if touching them would prove they were real. Carol met Lieutenant at the central hub. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much in the past 3 days. She shook his hand with both of hers and did not let go for a long moment. "We lost 60 people when they first attacked," she said. "Mostly the defense team. They fought hard, but there were just too many. After that, we sealed the doors and waited. We hoped someone would come." "We came," said simply. "How many wounded do you have?" 34, 12 are critical. We have one doctor and she hasn't slept since the attack." Grace was already moving toward the medical area. Her bag was lighter than it had been at the start of the mission. She had used supplies on human soldiers during the march. Now she would have to make what remained stretch across 300 more people. Watched what happened next with the careful attention her training demanded. She recorded every detail because she knew the council would want to understand this. She was not sure she understood it herself. The same soldiers who had killed with such terrible efficiency just hours ago now moved through the colony with impossible gentleness. They spoke softly to frightened civilians. They helped elderly survivors to more comfortable positions. They distributed the small amount of food and water they carried without keeping any for themselves. Danny Cole found a group of children huddled in a storage room. There were 9 of them, ranging from perhaps 4 to 12 years of age. Their eyes were wide and their faces were dirty, and some of them had been crying for so long that no more tears would come. Followed him into the room and watched. Cole lowered himself slowly to the floor, grunting as his wounded leg bent beneath him. He sat cross-legged among the children and made himself small, less threatening. His voice changed when he spoke to them. Softer, warmer, like a different person entirely. "Hey there," he said. "My name is Danny. I'm here to help you get home." A small girl with tangled brown hair looked at him with suspicion. "Are the monsters gone?" "Not yet, but my friends and I are going to keep you safe until we can take you somewhere there are no monsters. Does that sound okay?" The girl considered this. "My mom went to fight the monsters. She didn't come back." Saw something pass across Cole's face. Pain, perhaps, or understanding. He reached out slowly and took the girl's small hand in his large one. "I'm really sorry about your mom. She was very brave. She was trying to protect you, wasn't she?" The girl nodded. "That's what moms do, and that's what I'm going to do now. I promise I will keep you safe." "Do you promise for real?" "For real, cross my heart." He made a gesture across his chest that did not understand. The girl seemed to accept it. She moved closer to him, and then she was leaning against his side, her small body pressing into his armor. The other children watched this exchange. One by one, they moved closer too. Soon Danny Cole was surrounded by children, some sitting beside him, some leaning against him, one small boy actually climbing into his lap despite the bulk of his combat gear. He began telling them a story. It was about a brave princess who had to cross a dangerous forest to save her kingdom. The forest was full of scary creatures, but the princess was not afraid because she knew her friends were waiting for her on the other side. Recorded all of this. She noted how his voice rose and fell with the story. She noted how the children's breathing slowed as they relaxed. She noted how a man who had killed without hesitation could transform himself into something gentle and safe through will alone. She could not explain it. Among her people, warriors were warriors, caregivers were caregivers. The roles did not overlap. They could not overlap. The psychological profiles were too different. Yet here was Danny Cole doing both. Grace entered the storage room an hour later. She had finished treating the critical patients and had come looking for the children. Her face was tired, but she smiled when she saw them. She reached into her medical bag and pulled out something soft and small. A stuffed animal, realized. A creature with long ears and soft fur that humans called a rabbit. "I brought this from Earth," said, handing it to the smallest child present. "His name is Hoppy. He's very brave and he keeps bad dreams away. Will you take care of him for me?" The child clutched the toy with desperate gratitude. Did not understand. Medical supplies were limited. Weight allowances on combat missions were strict. Grace had chosen to carry a children's toy instead of additional bandages or medication. She had made this choice knowing she might need those supplies to save lives. "Why did you bring that?" asked quietly. Looked at her with something like surprise. "Because there might be children. There are always children." But the weight could have been used for more practical supplies. "This is practical," gestured at the small face now pressed against the stuffed rabbit. "That child will sleep tonight because of this toy. She'll have comfort when everything else has been taken from her. What could be more practical than that?" Had no answer. Lieutenant called a meeting of his remaining sergeants, attended as an observer. The news was bad. Updated intelligence from the Endurance showed that reinforcements were moving faster than expected. They would arrive in 6 hours, not 18. Evacuation transports could not reach the colony in time. The human forces were trapped with nearly 300 civilians they could not abandon. Delivered this information calmly. His officers received it calmly. There was no panic, no despair, no desperate search for alternatives, just acceptance. "So we hold," said one sergeant. "We hold until pickup arrives." "That's the plan," confirmed. "We set defensive positions around the colony entrance, multiple fallback lines. We make them pay for every meter." "What about the civilians, if they breach the doors?" "They won't breach the doors. That's not an option we're considering." Listened and understood what they were really saying. These humans had accepted their probable deaths. They had accepted it quietly, without discussion, without argument. The moment they learned children were present, the mathematics of survival simply stopped mattering. She thought about Danny Cole with children leaning against him. She thought about Grace carrying a stuffed animal into war. She was beginning to understand humans. That understanding filled her with a fear she could not name. They arrived with the darkness, 200 soldiers against 26 humans who could still fight. Watched from a protected position inside the colony entrance. Lieutenant had ordered her to stay back to survive, to complete her report. She had accepted the order because refusing would help no one. The first wave came at full speed. They believed in overwhelming force. They believed that superior numbers would break any defense. They had conquered 17 worlds with this strategy. They had never fought humans before. The outer defensive line held for 90 minutes. Ben commanded it with quiet efficiency. He positioned his soldiers behind hastily constructed barriers of mining equipment and storage containers. He gave orders in a voice that never rose above speaking volume. When soldiers fell, he filled the gaps himself. Counted the dead, 38 in the first 90 minutes. The humans lost 4. The mathematics still did not favor the humans. They never would. But they were learning something that mathematics could not express. These small creatures did not break. These small creatures did not run. These small creatures made you pay in blood for every centimeter of ground. The outer line fell back to the second position. This was planned. Had designed the defense in rings, each one than the last, each one more costly to breach. They would win eventually. Everyone knew this. The question was whether they would win before the evacuation transports arrived. Hour 3, the second defensive line. Lieutenant took a piece of shrapnel to his right arm during a close assault. The bone broke. Could see the unnatural angle of it even through his armor. Grace reached him between waves and set the break with materials salvaged from mining equipment. "I need to stay sharp," said when she offered pain medication. "Clear head." "You have a compound fracture." "I've had worse." He returned to command with his arm bound against his chest. He gave orders left-handed. His voice never wavered. Hour 5. They had lost 60 soldiers. The humans had lost 7 more. 19 remained. Danny Cole held a position on the right flank with 3 other soldiers. His leg wound had opened again, and blood soaked through his pants in a dark stain that grew larger by the hour. He refused to leave his position. Santos was beside him. The young private who had been nervous before the mission now moved with the terrible calm of someone who had passed through fear and come out the other side. She reloaded her weapon with mechanical precision. She fired with accuracy that would have impressed veteran soldiers. "You should fall back," Cole told her during a brief pause in the fighting. "Take the next rotation. Rest." "You first, Sergeant." "That's not how it works." "Then I guess we're both staying." Hour 7. The second line fell back to the third. 15 humans remained. The commander attempted communication. His voice came through the colony speakers, deep and resonant with the confidence of certain victory. "Humans, you have fought well, but this is finished. Surrender the civilians and you may leave with your lives. We have no quarrel with soldiers who follow orders, only with those who harbor what we seek." Lieutenant responded himself. His words were brief and contained a term that later learned was considered extremely vulgar in human culture. They attacked with renewed fury. Hour 9. Danny Cole's position was overrun. Saw it happen through a gap in the defensive barriers. A wave of broke through the left flank and swept toward Cole's squad. There were too many. The humans fought hand-to-hand, their ammunition exhausted. Cole pushed Santos behind him and faced the oncoming enemies alone. He pulled something from his belt, a small device that blinked with red light. His final transmission came through the communication network. His voice was calm, almost peaceful. "Tell my daughter I kept my promise." The explosion killed 11 soldiers. It killed Danny Cole instantly. Did not see the aftermath. She did not want to see it. Santos survived. She crawled back to the third defensive line with burns on her face and blood in her eyes. She picked up another weapon and kept fighting. Hour 12. 11 humans remained. They had lost 140 soldiers. Grace worked without rest. She had run out of proper medical supplies hours ago. She used strips torn from clothing as bandages. She used liquor from the colony storage as disinfectant. She performed surgery with mining tools because her surgical kit was empty. She saved 7 lives that night with nothing but determination and skill. Hour 15. Grace was killed. She was pulling a wounded soldier to safety when the shot took her. Saw her fall, saw her body go still, saw the hands that had healed so many people lie motionless against the cold ground. Santos screamed. It was a sound of pure anguish, the sound of someone losing a person they loved. She charged the position that had fired the shot. She killed 3 enemies before her pulled her back. Hour 16. The evacuation transports broke through. The sky lit up with weapons fire as human ships descended. The battered and broken by a defense that should have been impossible began to retreat. They had lost 170 soldiers. They had gained nothing. 11 humans remained standing when the transports landed. All 87 children were loaded first, then the wounded civilians, then the elderly. The soldiers went last, as soldiers always did. Walked through the battlefield as the evacuation proceeded. She walked among the human dead and tried to understand what she was feeling. She found Danny Cole's body. What remained of it? She found Grace where she had fallen, her hands still reaching toward the soldier she had tried to save. She found the small stuffed rabbit that had fallen from Grace's pocket. It was stained with blood but still intact. She picked it up without knowing why. The last transport lifted off with a board. Through the window, she watched the planet shrink below them. Somewhere down there, they were regrouping. Somewhere down there, the dead were being left behind because there was no time to recover them. Santos sat across from her. The young private's face was burned and bandaged. Her eyes were empty. "He kept his promise," Santos said quietly. "Sergeant Cole, he said he would keep those children safe. He did." Nodded because she did not know what words would be appropriate. "That's all that matters," Santos continued. "That's all that ever matters." Held the blood-stained rabbit and wondered if she would ever understand. Returned to the Endurance in a transport filled with wounded and traumatized survivors. The ship's medical bay was not large enough for everyone, so they converted cargo holds into temporary treatment centers. Human crew members worked without rest to accommodate the refugees from 4. She went to her quarters and sat in darkness for a long time. Her mission was complete. She had observed humans in war. She had witnessed their tactics, their psychology, their decision-making patterns. The Council would expect a report. They would expect analysis. They would expect her professional assessment of whether humanity represented a threat that needed to be contained. She turned on her recording device and began to speak. "Humans are the most dangerous species I have observed in 40 cycles of service." She deleted the words. She tried again. "Human military forces demonstrate irrational attachment to individuals they have no genetic or political obligation to protect. This psychological vulnerability could be exploited through targeted threats to civilian populations." She deleted those words too. She tried a third time. "Humans will die for strangers. They will hold positions that cannot be held. They will smile at children and kill without hesitation and somehow remain the same beings throughout. I do not understand how this is possible. I do not know if I want to understand." She deleted everything and sat in silence. 3 days passed. Did not leave her quarters except for necessary functions. She did not eat properly. She did not sleep well. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Danny Cole showing her pictures of his daughter. She saw Grace laughing at a joke she could not remember. She saw humans dying for people they had never met. On the 4th day, Captain Laura Mitchell came to her quarters. The captain looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she had not slept much either. She had lost friends in the battle below. She had lost crew members she had known for years. Yet she had come to check on. "Observer, may I come in?" Let her enter. The captain sat in the single chair and looked at her with those eyes that seemed to see through things. "You haven't submitted your report yet," Mitchell said. "Command noticed. They're asking questions." "I am still processing my observations." "I understand. What you saw down there was difficult. Even for humans it was difficult." Was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that had been consuming her since the transport lifted off from 4. "Why?" Mitchell raised an eyebrow. "Why what specifically?" "All of it. Why did your soldiers stay? Why did they die for colonists they had never met? Why did Sergeant Cole refuse evacuation when his wound was clearly severe? Why did Grace carry a toy for children she did not know existed?" The captain was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. Because they were ours. I do not understand. The moment we landed on that planet, those civilians became our responsibility. They became ours, not in a legal sense or a political sense, in a human sense. We saw them, and we decided that their lives mattered more than our own. That is not logical. No, it's not. Mitchell smiled, and there was sadness in it. Logic would have told us to retreat. Logic would have told us the mathematics didn't work. But we're not a species that runs mathematics on human lives and accepts the results. Then what are you? We're people who make promises and keep them. We're people who carry stuffed animals into war because there might be children who need comfort. We're people who will burn ourselves to nothing protecting what we love. Thought about this. She thought about Danny Cole's last words. Tell my daughter I kept my promise. What promise did Sergeant Cole make to his daughter? He probably promised to come home, or to keep her safe, or to always be there for her. Mitchell's voice grew thick. He couldn't keep those promises himself anymore, so he kept them for someone else's daughter instead. That's how we think. If I can't save my own child, I'll save someone else's. The love doesn't go away just because the target changes. Did not respond. She did not know how to respond. The children from the colony are being relocated to a safe station, Mitchell continued. The little girl that Sergeant Cole was protecting is going to be adopted by his sister back on Earth. She'll grow up knowing that a stranger loved her enough to die for her. Is that supposed to provide comfort? I don't know, maybe. Maybe comfort isn't the point. Mitchell stood up slowly. Maybe the point is that even in the worst moments, humans choose to care. We choose to love. We choose to protect. It doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always end well, but it's who we are. She walked to the door and paused. Write whatever report you need to write, observer. Tell the council whatever they need to hear. But remember what you saw down there. Remember that humans are not dangerous because we're strong or aggressive or advanced. We're dangerous because we care. We care so much that we'll walk into certain death without hesitation if it means protecting someone we've decided matters. She left without waiting for a response. Sat alone in her quarters for another hour. Then she activated her recording device and began her report. She described the tactical situation on 4. She described the defensive strategies employed by Lieutenant. She described the weapons used, the casualties inflicted, the timeline of events. All factual, all professional, all exactly what the council expected. At the end of the report, she added a personal observation. She was not required to include it. She was not supposed to include it, but she could not stop herself. The council asked me to assess whether humans represent a threat. My answer is yes. Humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, but not for the reasons you might expect. They are dangerous because they love. They love so deeply and so irrationally that they will sacrifice everything for people they have never met. They will die for strangers. They will comfort children in the middle of a battlefield. They will keep promises that no one asked them to make. She paused, thinking of Grace's blood-stained rabbit still sitting on her desk. I have observed 17 species in conflict. None of them frighten me like humans do, not because of their weapons, not because of their strength, because I do not know how to fight against a species that cares. I do not know how to defeat an enemy that is willing to lose everything for love. She ended the recording. The report was transmitted to the Galactic Council. She never learned what they did with her observations. She never learned whether they decided to contain humanity or embrace them. But every night, when she tried to sleep, she still saw Danny Cole showing her pictures of his daughter. She still saw Grace laughing at a joke. She still heard those final words transmitted across a battlefield. Tell my daughter I kept my promise. The humans had won the Battle of 4. They had saved every civilian. They had lost 15 soldiers in the process. Had lost something too. She had lost the certainty that the galaxy made sense. She had lost the comfort of believing that survival was the highest priority. She had lost the ability to look at humans and see just another species. What she had gained in return was something she could not name, something that kept her awake at night, something that made her question everything she had ever believed about war and sacrifice and love. The humans called it understanding, called it the thing that would not let her rest.